Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by a New York State Assembly candidate, Mr. Adam Baumel. He is actually on his way a little bit later to the one and only debate. And apologies that we're running late, totally my fault. What is the answer, you guys? Always electronics. You guys know I suck at that. So thank you for bearing with me. I digress. Anyway, so you are running. Is this the first time you've run for something?
Yes, it is. I've been involved with campaigns in the past, been involved with like legislative work up in Albany about 3 years ago. And before that, I was in the military. So yeah, this is the first time in which I'm actually running for office myself.
Awesome. And what made you decide to do that?
It was a number of things, but I would say the main thing was 3 years ago when I was up in Albany working for Assemblyman Benedetto. I saw firsthand corruption's ugly face, and it started first with former Speaker Sheldon Silver. He was a speaker for 21 years, which, if I recall correctly, was the longest in the history of the state of New York, which New York is not a young state for anyone who is not aware. And then only 3 months later, the former majority leader of the state Senate, Dean Skelos, and his son were both arrested. So, and they represent each party. Silver was a Democrat, is a Democrat still, I'm assuming, and Skelos is a Republican. So this showed to me that corruption has no party, and it also showed me that we need people who are ready to do the work on the ground and make sure to hold these people accountable for what they do.
Absolutely. As far as acknowledging that both parties have corruption and just are more comparable than people like to acknowledge. What made you decide to run Dem, especially after 2016 and we were just totally screwed, and they cheated and took Bernie? What made you decide to still run Dem and go that route?
So in New York, they do have the fusion voting system where there's third parties do have a bit more access maybe than some other states do, but you still are kind of closing yourself off from so many resources, which even with the ability that I was able to get resources to the Democratic Party, it still has been a very tough time, mainly for the fact that there's many races that are, I guess you may say, higher in the food chain than mine. There's a big congressional race in my area, which you probably have heard of, the Max Rose candidacy against Dan Donovan.
Yes.
So there was a very big primary for that back in June. And there's also Andrew Gennardis is running in the 22nd State Senate District, which he's looking to unseat a very long time Republican, Marty Golden. So there's a lot of moving parts, if you will, in my area. So, I mean, when people are faced with the choice of, do I donate to the congressional race? Do I donate to the state Senate race? Or do I donate to the lowest, House, the assembly race? They typically choose one of the other two, and that also applies to volunteering and just basically resource allocation. So it's been tough. I have to be honest and open about that, but it's been a great learning experience. We still have 2 more weeks to try to make up any more ground, obviously, to increase our chances of success on election day. But it's definitely been difficult having to basically squeeze every little penny out of every little donation that we receive. And I think we've done a good job to this point, but there's always more we can do, and we're going to do everything we can to, again, make sure it's used to the best of its ability to be successful on election day.
Absolutely. Something that is very interesting is I didn't even know what the position you're running for was until I started my show. I mean, I knew the name, but I'm like, what do they do? So for our viewers who are watching right now, do you want to just kind of give a synopsis of what being elected for this position would entail, like your daily work or what have you?
Absolutely. So the easiest way I could explain it anyone who's familiar with the federal system, where we have senators and congressmen, New York State Assembly is essentially the New York State House. Just because we call it the Assembly, it essentially is the same thing as the House and the Senate. But one big difference, on at least on the Senate side, is it's only 2-year terms, in the same way that the Assembly is a 2-year term. So those people who run on the Senate side have a much tougher, I guess you could say, campaign season, because they have to appeal to about 3.5 times the constituency, and they don't have the benefit of a 6-year term like they do on the federal level. But on the House, they're responsible for things like resolutions. They're very much involved in the budgeting process. They're very much involved. The MTA is a very, very big institution and organization that does a lot in New York City, because we're a city that relies very heavily on mass transit, even though mass transit really hasn't had the investment that it's really deserved in, well, decades. Only 22% of our subways are ADA compliant. Our bus system is the slowest running in the country, if not maybe even the world. I'm not sure if it's changed in the last year or two, but there are a lot of issues that we need addressed. And that doesn't even come close to even touching on the fact of corruption in like the real estate lobby and in our state government. There's a lot of things we need addressed, and that's greatly why I decided to run. Not because I think the Democratic Party needs more representation, because they take up about 7/10, about 70% of the assembly. So there's not any kind of issue getting bills through, but I feel like they could be put in a more economic populist fashion, which is really what I would guess I would call myself if I had to give myself a label, would be an economic populist, someone who supports organized labor, someone who supports really rational movement forward when it comes to transportation. And we have something in New York we're pushing called the New York Health Act, which is very similar to Medicare for All on the federal level. So those things are basically what I'm running on, the things that really benefit people who are working class people.
Awesome. And this is something I ask all my candidates. Do you think you would run if Trump did not win?
Yes. I feel like it definitely got a lot of other people more involved and more, getting that whole resist thing, which I don't necessarily subscribe to, because that kind of ignores if he were to do something that's the right thing. You'd say, I'm going to resist that. Like, that's kind of, you can't
from doing it, because
I can't say it happens often. I'm not a Trump cheerleader here. I don't want to give any impression that I am. Okay.
People say resist. It's like they think if you say resist, like he's not going to do what he's doing.
And I like to focus primarily anything regarding Trump, primarily on policy. I don't get into the weeds when it comes to like the things he says that might be offensive. I'm not saying he shouldn't have more respect for people who are unlike himself. I think that would be something that would be great if he did. But I would be willing to deal with the obscenities that he gets involved with if he were better on policy, which is the main thing I care about. If he were great on policy, I don't want to say I wouldn't care, but I wouldn't focus nearly as much on, his mood swings or the tweets from 3 a.m. or calling people Rocket Man and little hands and all these different things. Like they're distractions. That's really all they are. That's all I think of them as, at least.
Absolutely. Now I kind of digress a little back, but you are a veteran.
Yes.
Can you tell our viewers what it is you did in the military?
Sure. So I was a logistics specialist in the U.S. Navy, and I was responsible for running a program that basically turned over any equipment in my department, which I was in AIMD. AIMD stands for Aircraft Intermediate Maintenance Department. So we were responsible, our department rather, was responsible for taking care of a certain type of maintenance on the planes, which is intermediate maintenance. I'm not going to go into all the minutia when it comes to the different levels of maintenance, because we'll be here all day just talking about that, and that's not really why we're here. But there's 3 levels. There's depot, organizational, and intermediate, which is in the middle. But I was responsible for basically taking any of the equipment that was no longer being used and basically just driving it over after conducting a full comprehensive inventory to this other organization that was like working alongside called Dermo. And that money would basically, they would take that equipment rather, and then basically auction them off and put that money back towards our ship's budget. And this was something that was considerably over my pay grade, but it was something I took on, and I think I did a good job doing it. I never had any kind of issues whatsoever. And yeah, I never saw myself though being in the Navy for 20 years, doing the whole career thing. I thought of it as a great experience to make myself mature as an adult, as a person. And it gave me a lot of ability to work those long hours I think you need to be able to do if you want to be in government, or if you want to be efficient in government. And I think that's something, it definitely doesn't make me better than anyone else that I served. It doesn't automatically mean you would be a great legislator, but I think a lot of things I did go through and all the difficulties that many young sailors go through definitely built in me a strong responsibility and many other strong values, I think, that would make me a very good legislator and very efficient.
Absolutely. What is it you do now for work?
So earlier I did speak about the fact that only 22% of our subways are ADA compliant. So that kind of goes, I learned a lot more about that because of the fact that I'm a wheelchair accessible for hire vehicle driver, predominantly driving on Uber's platform. So again, I feel like this has given me a lot of insight as far as the issues that are ongoing with Access-a-Ride, which for those who don't live in New York, Access-a-Ride is a program through running that basically gives a lot of people with accessibility needs the ability to get a ride in one of those. It's like a smaller bus with the ramp and everything, but people are waiting hours and hours at a time to get this vehicle to show up to them. And a lot of people just don't think about the fact that many people in wheelchairs and other forms of accessible needs, people are going to work. They're not going to playing bingo necessarily. They're not just going to the mall. They're going to something that's providing income. So the fact that this is such it's falling so far short is something why I got so interested in driving a wheelchair accessible vehicle. So again, I feel like I never would have gotten this insight if I didn't have this opportunity to be picking people up and asking them and having these conversations that most legislators don't have that opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. You know, that's so awesome because Uber didn't used to have like a place to comment or a box you could check or something. And I'm visually impaired. So I went legally blind 2 months ago. So these Uber people would come up, and I get Uber all the time because I can't drive. So, and I'd be like, I don't know if that's them. I'll admit, I did get in a car that was just a guy who was waiting for his girlfriend.
Oh my goodness.
That was uncomfortable. But so it's hard. Like, I love that you're able to provide that service because you're right. It definitely wasn't as accessible as it should have been. So you do have Medicare for All on your platform, as all progressives do. Why is that something you have on your platform? Why is that important to you?
So it would create access for all people to get health care. At this point, what is it, like 30 million people in the US still do not have health care. It's probably even higher than it was based on the different kind of things that have happened since the Trump administration came into effect, of course. But I feel like New York has a real opportunity here to pave the way, like they have in many other instances, like same-sex marriage equality. We were one of the first states to pass some form of the Reproductive Health Act, where basically women were given the opportunity to seek an abortion if they so deemed that it was necessary for their situation. So I feel like New York has a grand opportunity to institute something called the New York Health Act, which would basically do the same thing or very similar thing that Medicare for All is looking to do. It would eliminate copays, deductibles, et cetera, and it would basically push out private insurance, which is the main reason why we pay so much for our health care. And it would make sure that all people have health care as a right and not as a privilege, which I think is an absolute must in the 21st century in the most wealthy country in the world and one of the most wealthy states in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. We really only need one state to set the precedent, and then people can see how advantageous it is. We were so close in California, and then Rendon, a Democrat,
Yeah.
shelved the bill. So if we can even get just one, like, we can do this. So it's definitely, on that note, please vote for people who have Medicare for All on their platform and getting money out of politics. Those are the two most important things. Adam, you're part of the Wolf Pack.
I am.
Was not taking big money like immediate on your
Oh,
platform?
There was no thought that went into it. It was immediate. It was a, you know how impulsive decisions are not always well thought out. This is not an example of that. There was no chance I was ever going to take any money from these big corporate PACs or anything, or like lobbyist money. And in fact, there's actually a lot of Democrats in my state who there's a big issue ongoing now, which is one of my biggest issues that I've addressed on my campaign, is a big strike by a union called IBEW, which is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 3. And this union is not only in New York City, it's outside as well in Long Island and Westchester and beyond. And they've been fighting with Charter Communications, who is the parent company of Spectrum, who Spectrum, I think, is either the second or third largest telecommunications company in the country. So, I mean, this is not something that's only, this strike is only affecting us regionally, but it's something that I think sends a great precedent that we really need to take the side of working class Americans and our unions. With this Janus decision, we really need to focus on really, solidarity cannot just be a word. It has to be an actual mentality, and we need to really be standing by them. And I only actually found out about a lot of these legislators, again, on the federal and state level, taking this money when I realized my opponent had accepted this money this past March, which was a full year after the strike had started.
Wow. I saw when I was researching your page, you stated that, let's see where the numbers are, over 570 days into that strike we are. That's disgusting.
I think they're 577 now. It's been March 28th, 2017 is when it all started. And only recently, in the last few weeks, has our mayor officially boycotted. Then Governor Cuomo joined the boycott. And there's been 30 to 40 other legislators on different levels doing it. Our public advocate, who's the favorite to become the next leading attorney of our state, Tish James, joined, and many other city council members, state assembly members. They've all joined this boycott. But unfortunately, a few days ago, my opponent went to New York One, which is, again, one of the studios in line with Spectrum, and she went on a show called City Hall Tonight, or Tonight at City Hall, one of the two. And she basically cut right through the picket line to do the show. So
I just want to clarify. You said that Cuomo?
Yes, he actually joined as well. Yeah.
Okay, but that guy in New York, Cuomo.
Yes.
No, I can't. I'm glad I'm sitting down. It must be really bad.
I definitely have criticisms about our mayor, about our governor. But again, it's all about being held accountable. When they do the right thing, you got to give them credit for doing the right thing. The same thing with our president, and he did the right thing here, as did our mayor. And I'm just waiting for the rest to do it. And actually, as of 8 p.m. last night, they suspended all picketing activities because they're going to come to the table to try to negotiate. Whether this means it's going to come to an end and they're going to make sure that they can maintain their benefits that they have actually worked for. They're not gifts. They actually worked for these benefits, whether it was their pension funds, their health care, etc. They worked for those benefits. And these are things that Spectrum was trying to take away from them. So it's about a 72-hour moratorium to see if this all works out or not. I'm my fingers are crossed, and I'm really hoping beyond hope that they'll do the right thing here. But I mean, only a matter of time. We'll see by this weekend if this strike's going to come to an end or not.
That's what was so beautiful about the teachers in the different states who started holding the line and picketing and for teacher pay and benefits, because it only took 10 days. That is so incredible. That is amazing. So the fact that they're letting this shit go on for 2 years, these people mean business. Like, wake up, they're not stopping. So
No, and this is following another big strike that took place 3 years ago with Verizon. And that's actually one of the unions that endorsed me, was the Communication Workers of America. CWA was striking with Verizon about 3 years ago, and I believe their strike was somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months, which is still a long time, but it was nowhere near as long as this. This is over a year and a half. It's going to be 19 months in a few days. It's the 28th, and today's what, the 23rd? So 5 days away to it being 19 months.
incredible. Back to my original question a minute ago. So you support Medicare for all. You do speak about mental health. You say you're an ally and you're a safe space, which I found just amazing. I love seeing that on people's pages because it speaks to who you are. It's not even being a candidate. It speaks to who you are. A lot of people need that help and they will not reach out unless somebody actually advertises it. So props to you, because that made my day saying that.
I was gonna say, I think it's very important that we, it's not just veterans. I feel like that's definitely a different vein of who I am. Being a veteran, a lot of vets don't like talking to people who never served, even if you didn't serve in the same capacity they did, whether they were someone who was boots on the ground or someone who was behind a computer screen. It's not an easy thing to open up about. And plus, a lot of vets are paranoid that if they seek help at an actual VA hospital or a civilian hospital, that this will be recorded and maybe something used against them for employment purposes or something else, like they may have their rights taken away. So, I mean, I think it's very important that we actively try to, I don't know if intervention is necessarily the right word, but it's intervening with people in the event that they feel like hurting themselves may even become an option. And I think, making sure people feel welcome to have these conversations is definitely something that we can be using as a solution, just to be better neighbors, better friends to each of us. We're all Americans here. We come from different places, but we're all trying to seek the same thing, that American dream. It might be a little different in different situations, but we all want to provide for our families. We want our friends and family to be healthy and happy. And I think that's really where that all comes from with me.
Right on. And kind of, connected to that somewhat, you do support legalizing cannabis, which is, I had a gentleman on who is a veteran, and he has severe PTSD, and cannabis has saved his life. So is that one of the reasons you support it?
So that's one of them as well, and that really big opioid epidemic. Staten Island is by far the area that has been hit hardest by the opioid epidemic. And actually, only a few weeks ago, there were 2 doctors, full-fledged doctors who could prescribe medication, who were arrested after essentially being drug pushers. And I don't want to make a slippery slope fallacy here or anything like that, but who knows if this is happening with other doctors that just haven't been discovered yet. We already know there's a conflict of interest when it comes to big pharmaceuticals and being able to almost offer doctors incentives to prescribe those kinds of medications, whether it's Oxycontin or morphine or what may have you, or as strong as fentanyl, which is 100 times stronger than morphine. So, I mean, I see cannabis as a clear alternative that has nowhere near the side effects, nowhere near the dangers, whether it's talking about things like overdose or talking about things like dependency and many other things. And this is why people turn to heroin. It's because the doctor, in the event they are doing, a better job and not overprescribing, these people are turning to heroin because they are not able to get their fix any other way. So I see cannabis as a clear set solution to, especially on the medical side, to this. And even to go a step further, I think it's something that when it comes to freedom, anyone who's like libertarian or believes government should not be in every step of our lives, I don't feel like this is much of something to ask. I mean, I'm not saying people should be able to smoke outside next to a school bus stop or something, or in schools. I think they should be able to smoke in the comfort of their own home, while watching, a movie and ordering some food on Grubhub if they want to. This is not anything crazy or radical that I think is that we're pushing for here. I think it's a personal freedom issue, and it also is a very safe self-medicating issue as well, simultaneously.
Yes, I'm not sure if you saw this, but a couple weeks ago there was something that came out that the makers of Oxy, I believe it was, were
Purdue.
coming up with, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that doesn't prove what's going on, I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Well, they want to be kept in line with profits. That's really all it's about. I mean, I'm not trying to say the big pharma hasn't developed some life-saving medications, because they have, and they've done it with the aid of our government, by the way. Many people are unaware that they've gotten a lot of government grants to develop these medications that save people's lives. But when you think back to things like Martin Shkreli and, increasing what was that the event you have go into anaphylactic shock, you can get they increased that like 1,100% or something. It's just, I understand these private companies have a right, or not a right to make a profit, and that's fine. I'm not saying they shouldn't be making a profit here, but there is some degree of morality when you take people's life-saving medication, something they rely on to live, and you increase it by tenfold. This is something where regulations really need to come in and kind of protect situations like that.
Absolutely. The best was when Shkreli donated money to Bernie, and he
turned it away.
He had just upped HIV and AIDS medication like $1 bajillion, and Bernie turned it around and donated it to an HIV and AIDS clinic.
There you go.
He's like, I'm so effing mad at Bernie Sanders. Good.
And I mean, I think this is something that people on the right and left can really unite over. And I think also, making it legal everywhere. First of all, also removing it from Schedule 1. That's a must. So these companies can start having bank accounts, and not dealing just with cash. But I mean, beyond that, I think this is something that both sides can really get onto, especially with the fact of all the profit revenue that's coming to all these states. And all the job creation. There's so many benefits to full legalization of cannabis for 21-year. It's not even for 18. It's for 21 and up. So I mean, no one in high school could be doing this. It's not like you could be in high school doing it legally, and it's not like high school kids can't get a hold of this anyway if they wanted to. So it's not like full legalization would make it easier to get a hold of. In fact, it might make it more difficult because of the regulations.
And it'll be more natural. It's not going to have things laced in it. Like when you go buy cannabis off the street corner, you have no idea what you're getting.
Exactly.
So at least it's more regulated this way, which in turn makes it healthier.
Yeah, I've heard of fentanyl being laced into it. I've heard of cocaine. I've heard of like PCP, LSD, all these different things. And anyway, sorry.
Are you getting to the time when you need to leave?
Not yet. I got probably about 5 or 10 more minutes.
Okay. One thing I always ask my candidates, especially so close to the general, is many of us feel so defeated when it comes to voting. I'm in Pennsylvania. We're a close primary as well, which just kind of messes with everything. But New York is pretty much the most screwed up way to register to vote, because you have to register like months and months and months in advance before people even know who the candidates are, essentially.
Yes.
So what is your message to people? Like if you're canvassing or phone banking and people say, what's the point? They're not going to count it anyway. Like, what do you say? How do you convince them?
Well, for one, this hits close to home. My girlfriend is, well, technically, I guess you could say she's still a registered Republican. I mean, she was apolitical growing up, so I don't want any of your viewers to hold it against her. I mean, they shouldn't hold it against her anyway. Being a Republican is fine. But she tried changing her registration, I believe it was about 4 months ago, and she's still considered a registered Republican. Like she still gets mailings from the Republican candidates in the area because, they do it based on registration. And if I recall correctly, it's almost a full year you have to change your party registration to vote in a different primary. We are the most closed off primary state in the United States. And we're New York. We're not Mississippi. We're not, Texas. We're not one of those densely red states. But again, they do this because it benefits incumbents. And that's not right either.
Absolutely.
It's the same. It's almost like the same discussion when you talk about gerrymandering. Republicans are better at gerrymandering, but that doesn't mean I want Democrats to start doing it more so or getting better at it. I want no one to be able to gerrymander. I want representation to be based on voters, not based on who representatives want to serve. So, I mean, these are issues that definitely are one of my bigger issues with the Democratic Party in New York, as well as, of course, what I said before, as far as the contributions they took from a union buster. There's definitely some things we need to do in New York to fix this Democratic Party. But to kind of go back into what you said before about why you were running as a Democrat, I feel that one of the best ways to address these issues is from the inside, not the outside. I know there will be some who disagree with me, and that's fine. But I mean, I feel like there's multiple ways in which we can do so to make coalitions, whether it's through the Working Families Party, whether it's through progressive caucuses in the New York State Democratic Party. All these groups can definitely join together with organized labor as well to make these issues come to fruition far sooner than they might otherwise. And that's kind of, I guess, an all-encompassing answer to numerous questions that you've given me, throughout this interview.
That's awesome. I'm so glad we actually worked out our schedule to
absolutely.
have you on. Let me see. John Del Conte, can you get NY23 James Clasby? Do you know who that is? I've never heard of him.
Do you know who that is? No. I'm asking. I have two volunteers here. We've been debate prepping all day, so they're here too. So I don't want anyone to think I'm just like looking at random spaces of my apartment. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Never heard of him.
If he wants, we can.
For you, John. I get awesome recommendations all the time.
Like pizza, like good pizza places to eat at, or things like that, or.
Well, that too. Yeah, I mean, you're almost my 100th candidate.
Really?
From across the country. I'm at like 97 or something in 2018, which is insane. So I find a lot of the candidates through viewers, which is pretty amazing. But anyway, so if you want to leave something with our viewers, what do you want them to take away so that they, recommend you to others in New York, or they throw you a few dollars, or they post the stream and promote? What do you want them to take away from this?
Well, first off, I'll say my website because I always forget to do that. I'm so bad at self-promotion, and it's definitely not a natural thing for me. But first, I'll say my website, which is BAUMELFOR64.com. And that's pretty much the same like handle when it comes to like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. But anyway, having said that, I'm running on a economic populist message. I would say that's definitely a major portion of what being a progressive is. But I mean, in my issue, it's a very blue collar district where we have people here who are trying just to get to work on time, and they rely on things like the subway or the ferry service or cars or driving their car in one of the most packed highways seemingly in the country across the most expensive toll in the country at the Verrazano Bridge. So I mean, I'm running on issues that will really, really change people's lives for the better when it comes to transportation and healthcare and senior citizens issues and accessibility issues. I mean, it's really all encompassing. And I know we're so caught up with Democrats and Republicans, and I'm not trying to run to be the Democrat serving my area. I'm running to be the economic populist, the champion, if you will, for working class issues. And I really feel that that's something that has resonated a lot, even with the most hardcore Trump supporters. When I've talked about some of my policy ideas, especially as far as reforming our government, they've really, really gotten interested. Just to touch on a couple of them before we get through with this, I'm pushing for 2 town halls every year, and I'm going to be pushing that in legislation. But I'm also going to do it myself, regardless of whether it passes. I'm pushing for a taxation transparency pie chart that would give taxpayers the full ability to see where all their state tax dollars go. And that would give them the ability to see what legislators are doing with their money, and them some peace of mind to see where their money is going. And finally, I'm doing a massive comprehensive series of voting rights reforms, whether it's making voting day a holiday, whether it's making it automatic registration, having early voting, having no excuse absentee voting, so many things that make it easier to vote, which would give people the ability to actually be represented through voting, which is really what we are. We're a representative republic, and you can't be represented unless you're voting and given the opportunity to vote. And I think that's absolutely very important and paramount to what I'm running on.
Absolutely. Voter reform is just so immensely important that, yeah, it needs to be on everyone's platform. So kick ass that you have that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're amazing. I'm so glad we got to finally work this out. John Del Conte, not sure when you tuned in, but as I said, I am visually impaired. So if I don't see all 7 of your comments, you're going to have to chill because I look at them afterwards. They scroll kind of quickly, okay? So just calm down. I'll look later. Thanks. So anyway, thank you again. I wish you the best of luck. We have 2 weeks till we vote, so this is super exciting.
Yes.
Hopefully cautiously optimistic with not just like everyone. For those watching, I have currently my most requested guest, Mr. Rodolfo Cortez. He's a doctor. He's running in California, and he has MMT on his platform. So he gets recommended all the time, and I finally have him Friday. It's hard when you work full time, both you and the guest, and then you got to just kind of like work it out. But anyway,
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good luck tonight. You're going to kick ass.
Thank you very much.
Is it going to be live streamed?
I believe there will be some groups live streaming. I know there's one called Fight Back Bay Ridge. I believe they'll be doing it. There's a few others as well. I'll definitely be retweeting that. I don't know if I will be doing it myself, but I know it'll be live tweeted by someone, at least live tweeted and live streamed probably as well. So
awesome.
Yeah, people should definitely tune in.
Yes. You got this. Don't be nervous. You got this shit. Don't hold it down.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
guys all for watching. And thank you once more, Adam. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.